Dr. Andy Tan had always believed that precision was the key to success. Whether it was the alignment of molars in a patient's mouth or the balance of his investment portfolio, he demanded that every angle, every ratio was perfect. Born Tanakau in Singapore, Andy arrived in Sydney in the 80s with little more than hope and a scholarship. He spent 5 grueling years at the University of Sydney's Faculty of Dentistry and honed his craft at Westmead Hospital. Dentistry to him wasn't just about teeth. It was metallurgy, chemistry, and psychology, all bound together by discipline. It was while preparing a silver amalgam one day that Andy first became fascinated by precious metals. Mercury, silver, tin, copper, zinc, each played a role in the tiny fillings that fixed people's dental lives. But what struck him most was that the cost of his materials rose and fell with the price of silver on the global market. That was the first time he realized the connection between metal and money. 4 decades later, Andy Tan's life had polished itself into quiet luxury. His dental practice in Bligh Street overlooked the skyscrapers of Sydney's financial district. His home in Mosman, perched above the calm ripples of the narrow North Shore Bay, was valued at more than $25 million. Each morning, he performed Tai Chi on the wide veranda, the rhythm of his movements synchronizing with the clinking masts of the yachts moored below. But while his hands were steady, the world around him wasn't. Inflation was climbing. Governments were printing money at a reckless rate, and the markets, he could feel it, were teetering. He'd lived long enough to know what that meant. Over the next couple of years, he stacked gold and silver bars in a vault in Singapore and built his pile of gold coins, maple leaves, eagles, kangaroos and pandas in a locked safe hidden behind a painting in his bedroom. Every ounce was a silent promise against the folly of fiat currency. His wife, who was born Ko Lee Lin, was called Linda ever since her family came to Australia in the 70s. Nowadays, everyone is comfortable calling her Lee Lin, but she sticks with Linda. She had become an Aussie. She saw things differently from Andy. One evening, after playing bridge with friends on her computer, she was feeling exasperated and decided to take out her feelings on her husband. For heaven's sake, why do you live like a doomsday prepper? We've got property, shares and bonds. Why lock up half our wealth in a vault on Yu Tong Sen Street? You haven't been home to Singapore for years. The most you ever do is a stopover at Changi Airport on your way to someplace else. You don't know what's going on in the city. He sighed as his patience was wearing thin. We have gold and silver because paper is trust, not value. When trust fails, gold is steady and silver soars. Linda folded her arms. So, when was the last time you paid for dinner with a gold coin? He smiled thinly. When people stop believing in their banks, they'll come knocking on my door, Linda huffed. My girlfriends at the tennis club have been talking for a long time about cryptocurrency. You should buy some of that. Someone called it digital gold. Which cryptocurrency were they talking about? I think it was Bitcoin. Andy's brow furrowed. It's not backed by anything real, a derivative of faith, worse than fiat. Linda walked away, muttering in Mandarin, Wangu, pig-headed. 18 months later, Wall Street began to tremble, and Andy's convictions were tested. Nvidia, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, each company's value began to tumble. Then came the news he feared most. The New York Commodities Exchange, the COMEX, had suspended gold deliveries. It was a temporary technical issue, they said, but Andy knew better. He called his nephew, who worked for a Wall Street investment bank. The young man said, "Uncle, I can't talk about it." His voice was tight. "But if I were you, I'd hold on to what's real." Then the United Kingdom followed suit. The London Bullion Market Association, the LBMA, closed its doors at 62 Threadneedle Street for system upgrades. Andy had heard enough corporate euphemisms to guess what that might mean. The next morning in Sydney was foggy and calm. An eerie silence blanketed the harbour. As Andy practiced his Tai Chi routine on his veranda, he could not keep his mind still. If gold and silver were being hoarded by central banks and financial institutions, if fiat was faltering, what came next? All day in his clinic, he was distracted, and that night, unable to sleep, he sat on his veranda, scrolling through articles about blockchain, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, XRP, and HBAR. He finished reading at 2:30 in the morning. Bitcoin, he admitted grudgingly, had some qualities like gold: limited supply, resistance to manipulation, no third-party risk. It was a store of value. In contrast, silver did something. It conducted, connected, and enabled. Without silver, there would be no electronics, no solar panels, no electric vehicles. And then, a single line from an article caught his eye. XRP is a bridge currency designed for fast, frictionless global settlement. A bridge? A conductor? Andy stared out at the silvery reflection of the moon wobbling on the surface of Mosman Bay and felt his heartbeat quicken. He muttered to himself, "Silver conducts electricity. XRP conducts money." The analogy was so clear that it made him laugh. For the first time, he understood. The future wouldn't be built on what was dug from the earth, but what flowed through the network. The next morning, Andy made a rare confession to his wife. "Linda, I think I may have been wrong." She was shocked. "About what? Have you decided that the world isn't ending?" He chuckled softly. "No, I was wrong about what happens next." When he explained, Linda was proud of herself. She was also proud of her husband. For the first time in a long time, she hugged him and kissed him on the forehead. Andy sold a portion of his gold holdings in Singapore, just 10%, and bought XRP, a bridge, he told himself, between the old world and the new. 2 weeks later, the world's financial system went into cardiac arrest. Fiat currencies fell off a cliff. Stock markets froze. Banks limited withdrawals. People queued outside ATMs that no longer worked. Gold stopped trading altogether. Silver markets locked up, temporarily, then seemed to find their feet. The whole of the crypto ecosystem dropped, too, but not as drastically and not as far. Of course, the blockchain didn't stop. Then, slowly, XRP's network of institutions began to rise. They used XRP to become the backbone of emergency settlements between banks and governments desperate to keep capital flowing. Andy's modest crypto wallet multiplied 100-fold in value overnight. Linda was speechless. How? How did you know?" Andy smiled. An old saying flashed through his mind. A happy wife, a happy life. But he didn't say that out loud. He said, "I didn't know. I just followed your advice." That wasn't really true. What he could have truthfully said was that he just followed conductivity. He sat quietly on his veranda that evening, sipping his favorite poker tea as he watched the last shafts of light blush the clouds above the harbor. The sun sank slowly behind the blue mountains in the west. "Perhaps," he said to no one in particular, "this is what true balance looks like between metal and code. It's the past and the future." The next morning, when Andy scrolled down through the Sydney Morning Herald website, he saw a story that made his heart skip a beat. The headline was, "Singapore Vaults Seized in Global Gold Confiscation." Apparently, Singapore had been caught up in a tangled network of international agreements that spread across Southeast Asia. The mess had nothing to do with the government of the Lionhead State. Their neighbors had left them with no choice. Andy called the vault company on Yu Tong Sen Street. They didn't pick up. He sent them an email, but got a non-delivery report. NDRs were not good news. His gold bars, worth millions, were suddenly inaccessible. He slumped into his chair, rubbing his eyes in desperation. For the first time in years, he felt a deep shiver of fear. Then Linda came onto the veranda, phone in hand. She said, "I just checked the price of XRP. It is going wild." She offered her phone to Andy. and he saw that XRP had risen by over 5,000%, and it was still going up. Relief spread across his face. Then amusement. "Seems," he said slowly, "that I may have lost my gold, but my bridge still stands." Linda tilted her head. She didn't understand. "What will you do now?" Andy rose, straightened his back, and smiled. "What I've always done, fill cavities. This time, they will be financial ones." As the morning ferry glided across the harbour, he felt a strange lightness. The world had shifted beneath his feet, yet he stood steady like a Tai Chi master. For a man who had spent his life perfecting the art of precision, Dr. Andy Tan had finally learned the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes, you must let go of the solid to hold on to what truly endures. In this case, it was connectivity that was becoming permanent.